Hi, I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and I'm continuing to create these videos with hopes of helping you work toward earning freedom if you're in a jail or a prison. That's where I had to start my journey and the preparations for success, the preparations that allowed me to open businesses after I got out of prison. I want you to be able to create your own pathway to success. And that's the really the inspiration behind this entire program that we call Preparing for Success After Prison. Now, in the previous video, you heard me speak with my friend Weldon Long, a guy who went to prison 3 times. And it wasn't until he concluded his 3rd time in prison that he was able to really get his life together and go on to build a successful business that generated not only millions of dollars, but added real value to the community and brought him a sense of enormous pride. We want you to develop a sense of pride and dignity and confidence. But in order to do that, you really have to begin sowing seeds today while you're locked inside of that jail or prison. Now, this module, we're talking about values. And values is really like a prerequisite to the entire program of this Preparing for Success After Prison course. When I talk about values, what I'm talking about is really defining success, about truly understanding what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that is going to give you this sense of meaning and relevance and fulfillment in your life? I knew that when I was inside of a jail, I was young and I'd never achieved really anything of success in my life, but I knew I was going to serve a really long sentence. My judge sentenced me to 45 years, but when I started, I was facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. I didn't know what that meant. Just like you may not know what it's going to be like when you come home. Well, I'm filming this version of this video of this series in August of 2022. It's been 10 years since I walked out of a federal prison and into a halfway house. It's been 9 years since I finished my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons, but it's 35 years since the day of my arrest. What I can absolutely tell you is that the start of that journey and the plans and the preparations that I made while I was in prison really put me into a position that opened opportunities. Just like you can make decisions today that will open opportunities not only while you're going through prison, but also when you come home. Our hopes are that you don't have to go through multiple rounds with the criminal justice system before you find your footing. Now, it's been a long time, I think, since I got out of prison at 9 years, and I've learned a lot. In fact, the impetus from this course is from what I learned while in preparing to create this course for people inside of a federal prison. You'll learn about it in some of the other modules, but when I was in prison, I used to teach these kinds of courses, but I would get locked in segregated housing for doing it because they would say I was, whatever the reason was, I'd go to the hole many times during my journey in prison. And one of the people who put me in the hole, he was a warden he was a captain at the time, but a few years after I got out of prison, his career advanced. He went from being a captain to being a warden, and he was at a judicial conference where I was a keynote speaker. And afterwards, he came up and he shook my hand and he introduced himself to me, and he told me that he remembered me when I was, when I was still locked inside of a federal prison. But now he said, I'm a warden. Maybe you'd like to come out to the prison and share your story with the guys who were there. And they were in a high security penitentiary. And I said, rather than just share my story and teach and inspire maybe guys, why don't I create a course? And that really is what got this entire program of Preparing for Success After Prison started. But here is the secret that goes way back to 35 years ago when I first got locked up and I was lying inside of a cell, and I used to visualize this is what I would be doing, sitting inside of my own home studio, creating videos I didn't even know about videos then, but really building a pathway that would show other people what I learned from the lesson of going through prison. I used to visualize saying, when I get out of prison, I'm going to be able to put on a suit and tie, walk into any environment, and nobody's going to know that I served a day in prison unless I told them. But as you can see, and as you will see as you continue working through this program, I am always telling people about the 26 years that I served in prison. Why? Because I know that I left a lot of people behind. And I feel a sense of duty and obligation and responsibility to work, to show people, how do you get out successfully? How do the decisions you're making today influence what you're going to become tomorrow? Well, I would love to say that I learned those lessons on my own, but that wouldn't be accurate. I learned them from somebody else who was incarcerated. And you'll read about that in this chapter of Earning Freedom, which is part of this course. I was inside of a jail cell, and I was fortunate in that an officer passed me a book that introduced me to Socrates. I don't remember if it was a book cart where I pulled it from first, but I do remember there was one time an officer who passed me the book, and I got to read about this guy, Socrates. Now, Socrates lived 2,500 years ago. At that time, it was against the law for people of what were called the elite class, the ruling class, to teach people from lower classes. But Socrates, like I'm sure everybody else who's watching this video, believes that every human being has the capacity to grow. And every human being has the capacity to become something more. And so he viewed it as a duty and a responsibility to try and teach those people. But it used to be against the law for people from the ruling class to teach people from, the working class or the slave class, because they wanted them to be slaves and they wanted to enslave them. But what Socrates wanted was to everybody to reach his highest potential. And so he taught them, but it was against the law. He was convicted. He was sentenced to death. And while he was waiting for his execution to get carried out, he received a visitor, and that visitor was going to open the jail cell and let him go off and be free. But Socrates said, "No, I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay here." And his friend said to him, "But you're going to die." And Socrates said, "Yes, I'm going to die." He said, "But why would you do that when I've gone to all this trouble to allow you to get out of prison and go on and live your life?" And Socrates said, "Because I live in a democracy. And in a democracy, I've got to take the good with the bad. And the good I've taken. This society has clothed me and fed me and protected me from foreign enemies. I've got to take the bad. This is a bad law. But I knowingly broke the law. And I have the right to change laws I don't agree with. I don't have the right to break laws. So rather than run away like a coward, I am going to stay here, I'm going to serve my sentence, and I know they're going to take my life, but I'll do it with my dignity intact." Well, when I read that story, I was, like most participants in the Prison Professor's courses, I was locked inside of a solitary cell. I didn't have access to college. I didn't have access to books. All I knew was I hated where I was, and I remember lying back on my rack and just thinking about, is there anything I can do to get out of here and become successful? And that's what I would challenge you to do. Start thinking today about what you can do to prepare for the life that you want to live when you get out. That's why this course is called Preparing for Success After Prison. And as I said in the first video, I will never ask anyone to do anything that I didn't do, to say anything that I'm not saying. Because I know the decisions that we make early are going to have a direct relationship on what we become later. They're going to open opportunities for us to seize and take initiative, or to create our own opportunities out of nothing. That's what it means to prepare. You know that I can get little victories today that will open new opportunities tomorrow. That's what my hopes are that you will see, because it's very easy while you're living inside of a prison or you're living inside of a jail to get disillusioned and to believe that nothing matters. There may not be classes available to you. There may not be people who want to teach you. There may not be resources around you. But if you work through this book, you're going to see the strategies that worked for me, not because I invented them, but because I learned from leaders. I learned from leaders who were formerly incarcerated, whether it was Socrates or Nelson Mandela or Viktor Frankl or Gandhi or so many others. I would read their stories. And I said, how can I take a little bit of what they're doing and use it in my life to build and to prepare? Because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready when I was a kid. When I first went, I wanted to get out of prison, but I didn't know enough yet. And it didn't matter that I didn't know enough, because there was nothing, I couldn't keep wishing for doors to open for me. I just had to figure, well, who do I want to meet in the future? How can the people I want to meet in the future help me? I knew I hated the place where I was. I hated hearing this message that the best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside and focus on my time inside. I wanted to say, no, I don't want to be inside. I don't want to learn how to live in prison while I'm simultaneously failing to learn how to live in society. I want to learn, what can I do today that will advance prospects for success in the future? And that, again, is what I want for you. And I've learned a lot since I came out of prison that I want to share with you. I can tell you, it's been, like I said, 9 years since I finished my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons. And out here, I've met a lot more people, or met many people who were in a far bigger prison than I was ever in, but yet they never went to a real prison. They're just in the prison of their mind because they can't think. They're unhappy. They don't know how to build a pathway to success. And I can tell you, to build that pathway to success, what I learned from leaders is you've got to start by defining success. What does success look like for you? It's not going to be the same as for everybody, right? What I chose as a pathway to success isn't the same that other people would choose for success. But I knew that for me, I wanted to be able to put on a suit and tie, walk into any environment, and start building my career, start building my life. And there's a lot I've learned since I've come home about why that's so important. It's like, this is a prerequisite, right? You remember when you were younger, maybe when you were 16 or 15 and you wanted to get your driver's license, you first had to go through some prerequisites. First, in my state, I had to be 16. Then I had to take an education course, a driver's ed course, and pass the course. Then I had to go take a written exam. Then I had to take a driving exam. And all those pathways together qualified me to get a driver's license. Well, similarly, if you want to prepare yourself for success, you're going to have to go through some prerequisites. And the first prerequisite is what this module is all about. It's about defining success for you. And you can do it in every area of your life. For me, while I was starting my journey, success meant I want to be able to come back to society strong, with my dignity intact, and with opportunities to prosper. Prosper is I valued prosperity. And that's different for every human being. What is success for you? To the extent that you can crystallize it and really define it, you can start saying, okay, that's the first path to creating a plan. Because I know where I am right now. I'm locked in a jail. And I know that I hate being in jail. And I know that I hate what I've done to my family. I know that I hate that my grandparents had to see me as a criminal. I hate that my parents had to see me as a criminal. I don't like it at all. I want to do something more with my life. And because I knew that I wanted to live as a law-abiding, contributing citizen, I had to start thinking about, what can I do? And that's something I would be challenging every person who's going through this course, because this is a self-directed course. The reason I created it as a self-directed course is because I don't know what access you're going to have when you're in custody. I don't know if you're going to have access to college. I don't know if you're going to have access to computer courses. I don't know if you're going to have access to even GED classes. I don't know any of that. What I do know you're going to have access to are softcover books. Okay? I know that. I know that jails and prisons allow softcover books in there. And I know I can send books in there. And I know that I can write books. But guess what? I know you can too. You may not know how to do it right now, but if that's important to you, I know you can build a pathway to becoming a creator of opportunities. And I think it's really important for every person to be a creator. Begin thinking today about what you can do, because the job market is not very friendly to people who have criminal backgrounds. They can pass a lot of laws that say people can't ask us about our criminal backgrounds. But if I go out into the job market and I've got tattoos all over my face, I don't care what laws exist, there are going to be some employers that are going to discriminate against me. So what can you do about it? You can choose to do something about it, and that would start with defining success. If I say, I know I'm in a difficult situation, I don't want to cry about it, I don't want to make complications about it. What I want to do is I want to build some pathway that will allow me to earn a good living, to provide for my family, to pay taxes, to become successful, regardless of what the job market does. And how do I do that? Well, I can't do that for you. That has to start with you defining success. It doesn't matter what you want to become. All that matters is that you define it. That is a prerequisite to moving forward in this course on preparing for success after prison. That was a prerequisite for Weldon Long that he told us about in the last video. He spoke about the challenges he found in getting a job after he was released from prison the first time, and as a result, he went back to crime. That brought him to prison a second time. And after he finished that second term, he wanted to do better, but he went out into the job market, found himself back into crime, and went back to prison. It was the third time that event happened that really caused him to change his life, when his father died. And he felt embarrassed that his dad never got to see him as anything more than a drug addict and a petty criminal. And Weldon wanted to do better. But he didn't just talk about it. Instead, he figured out to define what better looked like. And that meant for him getting a college degree, getting a master's degree, learning skills that he would later be able to use to build a successful business. And he did. As he spoke about, he was able to create a business that would support him and his family, even though he had to start on a commission-only sales position. But because he had invested so much time in becoming an outstanding communicator, he was able to really prosper. And prosper at a level that probably fewer than 1% of the American population or the global population succeeds at, even though he was a 3-time convicted felon. Well, I know the same level of commitment can help you prosper. What worked for me? Well, I knew I wanted to come back successfully. I knew I came up with this 3-pronged plan. What was it? You can read about it in the book. I can tell you about it right now. It was stop thinking about me and the challenges that I am facing and the fact that I hate being in prison, but start thinking about those people I want to meet in the future. Start thinking about the guy who's going to give me a job. Start thinking about the banker who's going to open a line of credit for me. Start thinking about the case manager that might move me from a high security penitentiary to a lower security prison. Start thinking about how can I turn people who used to be my adversaries into my advocates. Well, that required that I stop thinking about myself and I start thinking about them. That's what Socratic questioning is all about. It's about figuring out, if I want to define success, I've got to stop thinking about myself and start thinking about the people that I want to meet. Start thinking about the ways that I want to influence the world. And those questions led, in my case, to the plan I started to build. And that plan required that I start, number one, focusing on developing an education. Because I'd been a terrible student in high school and I needed to learn. Because why? If I felt that if I could spend time learning, I could then influence other people who also valued the importance of learning. I would persuade those people that I don't want to be a criminal anymore. And that became very important to me, to get an education. So that was one prong of my three-pronged strategy to prepare for success. The second prong for me was to contribute to society in meaningful, measurable ways. Get an education, contribute to society in meaningful, measurable ways. And then number three, it was to build a strong support network. I need to find a group of people that I don't know and that don't know me, and I need to persuade those people to believe in me. If I could do that, then I hoped those people would introduce me to other people. And that pathway is really what would make a difference in my life. Three-pronged plan, focus on education, focus on contributing to society, focusing on building a strong support network. Those became the values that guided my decisions in prison. What about you? What are you doing today? What seeds are you sowing today to work toward becoming successful in the weeks, months, years, and decades ahead? Because you can't expect the prison system to change your life. You've got to succeed in spite of what the prison system does and structures your life around you, right? I mean, and you've got to know that you can do it. And I like to quote these people that inspired me. I call them my mentors, my avatars, even though I never met them. I never met Henry Ford. But I'll always remember reading about one of the things that he said, or at least is attributed to him having said. He said, there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who say they can and those who say they can't. And then Henry Ford said, both of them are right. So when you think about that, what does that mean? That means, well, if I say I can't do something, then I'm probably right. But if I say I can do something, then I can probably make that happen. Success becomes possible when we see ourselves as being successful. And you'll hear about that in one of these later modules. But in this module, what I'm challenging and asking you to do is to define success in your life. Make those values a part of your adjustment plan. That is the foundation or the prerequisite that will give you the strength to reject the influences that you feel all around you. And you feel them a lot of times. And sometimes it gets sad. And sometimes you don't know what you're going to do with your life. Or sometimes, you get bad news from the outside. Well, this path becomes your compass. It becomes what you use to navigate your way to the future. The future that you are going to engineer. The future that you are going to architect to get through. I don't have any doubt that if you look back, you could say 5 years ago, what would you have done differently that may helped you to avoid where you are today? What could you have done differently 20 years ago? I know that for me, I can say I went to prison for 45-year sentence because I sold cocaine, but that's not really accurate. I went to prison because when I was 7 years old, I didn't listen to my parents. When I was 12 years old, I didn't pay attention in math class. When I was 15 years old, I started goofing off all through high school. And by the time I was 20 years old, because of the bad decisions that I'd made along the way, I was really positioned to pursue a criminal path. But I didn't like it. And I wanted to do something better. No, I should say I didn't like the result. I didn't like the result. I didn't like that I got a 45-year sentence. I could either cry about it, I could talk about it, I could say it's not my fault, I could say that, somebody put me in here and whatever, it wasn't fair, but that wasn't going to change anything. What does change things is when we define success and then we start creating a plan that will help us become successful. And you can become successful. I know that regardless of what past decision you have made in the past, you can become successful. And I'm going to show you through this course how you can engineer your path. That's what preparing for success after prison is all about. But I can't do it for you. Your mom can't do it for you. The warden can't do it for you. Your lawyer can't do it for you. You have got to be your best self-advocate. And to become your best self-advocate, you really have to build confidence. You have to build this pathway to becoming something more. And I hope that you will find these resources through prison professors and through our programs. I hope that you will find them influential. The next video that you're going to see is with my friend Malik Wade, a guy who transformed his life while he was in prison, just like you can as well. So I want to thank you for working through this module on values. I'm going to challenge you and ask you, help me be the change that I want to see in the world by making you successful. Go through these courses, commit, build your pathway, and I believe that you will be stronger, happier, and more fulfilled. Thanks so much for being a part of the Prison Professors community. My name is Michael Santos, and I believe in you.